Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Cousin Jonathan and Clyde the Rocketman Big Book Study. We're just two sober alcoholics reading, studying, and discussing the Big Book the way Joe and Charlie did back in the day. So we're going to start with a moment of silence, followed by our friend Lindsay saying the set-aside prayer for us.
God, today, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, so I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. So now we all have an open mind where it's as if we've never heard, we don't know what the eighth and ninth step are. We're hearing it for the first time. We're just completely open to whatever our higher power is going to reveal to us here together. Okay, so in 1973, Joe McHugh introduced Charlie P. as the AA speaker at an Al Anon convention. So Joe and Charlie soon discovered that they both shared a love for the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Traveling between their homes to discuss the big book became a regular event. So what happened here is Clyde and Cousin Jonathan met here in the Zoo Crew in 2023, and we discovered that we also shared a love for the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's why we started this meeting, because we love the big book and we want to share it with you the way we study the book together. So we meet here every Sunday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern in this room. And please have your big book handy so you can read along with us and take notes, and also to underline and highlight as we read. So if you have a big book, a hard copy, you might want to grab it. We're in chapter 6, Into Action. We're on page 78. We're studying the portion of the book where we're getting the instructions on step 8 and 9, the amends. Really significant part of the process here. And so we're going to be picking up on page 78 in the big book today. So we'll be recording the audio of this meeting to share with others on our podcast. So the purpose of this big book study meeting is to help you when meeting with a prospect, which is now called a sponsee, or talking about sobriety in general, because you want to be armed with the facts about yourself and the AA program. Freedom from alcohol comes through taking the 12 steps and working with others. Page 15 of the 12 and 12 says that AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. How soon do you want to be happy, joyous, and free? We suggest you purchase a copy of the big book for future use. You'll want to underline, highlight, and write notes. Please order your AA literature directly from AA so that the money goes to Alcoholics Anonymous, and to ensure that you get a good copy. We're not advocating rushing through the steps. We do highly suggest, though, that you have a sense of urgency in taking the 12 steps and having them become a way of life sooner than later. Pretend this is a matter of life and death. Well, actually, it is a matter of life and death. Once again, how soon do you want to be happy, joyous, and free? You can go to our website at thezoocrew.org to order your copy of the big book, as well as read it online. The big book is our basic text and contains the full recipe for recovery. It's impossible to find a loophole in the big book that excludes you from being a member of AA. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and kick things off now. And where we left off last week, we're in the middle at page 78 on the 8th and 9th step amends, but I want to do a recap for you of, basically what we're doing here. The directions for the 8th and 9th step amends are on page 76 through 83. And that's what we're studying now. And so an amends, they tell us what it is early on page 76, right in that first paragraph where it mentions steps 8 and 9, is that we're going to now, it says, now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. That's what amends are all about, repairing damage from the past. Okay. And it says, Bill's going to give us a bunch of examples here of what to do and how to do it. And it's not by mistake that the first thing he tells us about on page 77, he writes 3 whole paragraphs about this. And because it's such a significant thing, it says that the question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. So, like I said, he spent 3 paragraphs telling us all about it. And he talks about that first because that's a tough one for a lot of us. There's some people that have harmed us more than we've harmed them. And we're really, really angry at them and resentful, and, we hate them. So if we've harmed them, though, we need to make amends to them. And here's what Bill says about it on page 77. It says, it may be he has done us more harm than we have done him. But he tells us, nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. Okay. So, as painful as it is, and as much as we don't want to do it, it turns out it is very beneficial for us. And it says, we go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. And so here's a key sentence here that I want to point out. And I saw this word and I thought, okay, these 2 words, these sound familiar to me. I think we should look them up. And I'm going to do some cross-referencing for us and point out just how important these things are. He says, under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. And so I read criticize and argue. It's like, that sounds awfully familiar to me. And here's where that gets cross-referenced. In fact, I'll post it in the chat for us. It shows up 5 times in our big book. So let me copy and paste this for the group here. Copy, paste. Okay, here we go. So in the 4th step on page 67, it says, we avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. So he's telling us this is such an important thing for us to remember, and it shows up over and over. This is in the 4th step, to avoid retaliation or argument. Then if we look under step 9, which is where we're at now, we're on page 77, and it says, under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. It shows up again in step 9 on page 83. And it says that we're going to be very careful not to criticize them. Okay. Then in step 10 on page 84, it says we've ceased fighting anything or anyone. Step 12 on page 89, it says we cooperate and never criticize. And on step 12 on page 98, it says that argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. So arguing and criticizing and fighting are a thing of the past for us as recovered alcoholics. We do not do that. So when we meet with this person, even though we don't like them and we're mad and we want to, argue with them or criticize them, we do not do that. So, and he also says, I want to point out that the way to go to this person is to rely on the fourth step prayer, the first of the four step prayers, which is on page 67. And that's the one that says, you know, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And that's where it says we avoid retaliation or argument. And then it says a couple lines down, God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. So we're going to ask God to help us be kind and tolerant and have the right attitude when we go make amends to this person that we don't like. Okay, we have 90-second shares at our study here. So Mama Bear, come on in, and Lindsay's our timer today. Come on in and share with us, Mama Bear.
I just wanted to share with you all that I have next. Yeah, you guys are great. And I love the way Alyssa, you, and you guys, how you can break things down. This is what I've done. It's also rule 62 and 26 chips that I have underlined over here. That's how we got the, yeah, that's it.
Great.
26 and 62 chips. Thank you very much for letting me share.
Thank you, Mama Bear. Yeah, we appreciate you coming in today. So yeah, the rule 62 is don't take myself too damn serious. And rule 26 chip that we offer here is don't take other people too serious. That's exactly applicable to this fourth step prayer, where we realize that, hey, these people like myself are sick. And so I'm going to give them some grace and mercy and forgiveness and compassion and, you know, cut them some slack. And likewise, because I'm asking for people to cut me some slack because I'm inhuman and I make mistakes too. And it's like, hey, just kind of relax and give each other a break. That just makes things so much easier that way, instead of all this argument and fault finding and criticizing and etc. It's like, just relax, take a chill pill, and don't take myself so seriously and don't take other people so serious, just like Loretta was saying. So thank you for that. Okay, so and here's the good news, by the way, when we do that, when we take that action, here's what happens. If at the top of page 78, it says, his faults are not discussed. It says we stick to our own. This is making amends to the person that we're so angry at. It says, if our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. It says, sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own fault. So feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish us well. This is a former enemy. Now we've got just completely cleared the air, and it's like an entirely new relationship that's healthy and wholesome and good, which is exactly what we want as recovered alcoholics. It says occasionally they will offer assistance. Now, sometimes it says it should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. We've made our demonstration, done our part. So we did the right thing for the right reason. And it's water over the dam. And we did what we were supposed to do. We took care of business, followed the directions. But 9 out of 10 times, we're going to get a really great outcome. That's amazing to me. And it's true. So, okay, so that's a summary of where we're at so far. So we're in the 9th step amends. Bill starts it off with a specific example of the man we used to hate, gives us directions on that. Now we're going to learn some more examples of people that we need to make amends to. So we're in the middle of page 78 now, and picking up where we left off last week, it says most alcoholics owe money. We do not dodge our creditors. Telling them what we are trying to do, we make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Just a side note here, that's what held Dr. Bob back for a long time from making his amends, is he was afraid that the cat would be out of the bag and everybody would know he was an alcoholic and it would ruin his medical business. Everybody already knew he was an alcoholic. He thought it was a secret. He didn't want to divulge that to people because he thought it would harm him. That was his theory. It would cause him financial harm. So that's one of the reasons he didn't recover for quite some time. So that was Dr. Bob's experience. Okay, so it says, approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. So here's what we do. This is an example of what we do when we owe people money. It says, arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. So we let them know, we apologize, say, hey, I did you wrong, I owe you money. I can't pay you all the money now. Let's say you owe them $1,000 and you only have 200. You say, I'll give you $200 now and I'll make payments of $50 a month for the next 16 months or whatever, however it works out. Arrange the best deal we can and let them know, hey, I apologize. Please forgive me. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. It says we must lose our fear of creditors, no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we are afraid to face them. So there's some key information that we just read about. So we have to lose our fear, and that's the second prayer, the remove fear prayer. That's in the fourth step. So let's go to that for starters. The remove fear prayer is on page 68. So the first one was that the guy that we're mad at, or gal, the man or woman or person that we're upset with, we'd say, the sick man's prayer, sick person's prayer. Now for fear, we have the remove fear prayer. That's also in this section where we did our inventory on page 68. It says in the middle of the page, it says, the verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. And here's the key. It says, instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. And here's the prayer. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. That's in the middle toward the bottom of page 68, the remove fear prayer. So we're praying to God again. So the person that we were upset with, we pray about. The fear that we have of paying this creditor, because it's going to be, financially painful, we pray about it. And it says we're liable to, on page 78, we must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. And that's why we did our inventory. Remember, we did it in the fourth step on our resentments and anger, because that makes, when we're upset, that makes us want to drink. We're alcoholics. And then the second thing, so that was the first person that we were, the man we hated, that anger. We pray about it to get relief from it so we can go make amends to him. Here, there's fear of these creditors. That was the second thing we did inventory on in our fourth step. And the reason is fear makes us uncomfortable. And what do we do when we get uncomfortable? We drink. So that's why we ask God to remove our fear so that we're not going to drink. So that's what we do. When we owe people money, we pay them back. We arrange the best deal we can. So does anybody have any experience with making amends to someone that they didn't like, but they did it anyway? Or did somebody have some amends they need to make in that regard? And then also any creditor issues, because we need to pay back the money that we owe. So come on in and share with us, Lindsay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Lindsay, grateful recovering alcoholic. I do have an amends that I need to make financial wise, and I do have plans to make those. I know that it's important for me to do that because now I've had a spiritual awakening, which allows me to feel and see immediately when something is not right. And alcoholism centers in the mind. And that's why it's important. It's not about the drink. It's about what can happen if I'm blocking the spirit of the light. Then that is not allowing me to heal and to get better, which will ultimately lead me to that drink. So any of those amends that I need to make, if I can't make them, then I need to pray for the willingness to make them. And as you said, Clyde, use the fear prayer to move forward with that. So yeah, thanks for letting me share.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate it. Does anybody else have any amends that fall into these two examples that you can relate to or share about? Come on in, Mama Bear.
Well, most definitely I do. Yeah, I do. The latest one is a doctor bill, so I'm going to take care of that. It wasn't because of drinking; it was because I just didn't have the money. And another one was amends to someone that really disturbed me in my life. But I did some wrong, which I apologize. But they're just I did my part now anyway. But yeah, I know what I know the feeling of owing money. I'm really bad at finances. So that's something that I definitely have to make it, but I'm not going to have a drink over it. Praise God. Just take it one day at a time and just leave it all in His hands, and He will supply all my needs according to His riches and glory. Thank you very much for letting me share.
All right, thank you, Loretta. We're glad you're here. Okay, so that's the first two examples. Now we'll move on to a third example. The way Bill wrote this is just so you can figure out how to make your amends depending on what you've done. So the next example is at the bottom paragraph on page 78. It says, perhaps we've committed a criminal offense, which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. It says, we may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We've already admitted this in confidence to another person, but we are sure we would be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. So this is going to have some consequences for us. It says maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Another example, maybe we're divorced and have remarried, but haven't kept up the alimony to number one. She is indignant about it and has a warrant out for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble too. So he's given us these different examples now. And here, this is a really important paragraph. You should have your highlighter and your pen ready, this next one, because this talks about the principles that apply to all amends that we make. It says, although these reparations take innumerable forms, so he's acknowledging there's a lot of different instances of what we owe amends for, the harms that we've done to people, financial, emotional, mental, physical, otherwise. It says, although these take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. So this is how you decide. It says, reminding ourselves that we've decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience, we ask who? Our higher power. Again, prayer. You see that? We started with the sick person's prayer. We did the remove fear prayer. Now we're praying again. Prayer seems to be a pretty common theme here. We ask that we be given strength and direction, that's from our higher power, to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing, we have to be, we must not shrink at anything. So that's the guiding principle here. We're going to do the right thing. There could be some pain and suffering, and that's okay. We got to do it. So Jody, come on in and share with us.
Clyde, can we ask questions or do the questions need to wait till the end?
Oh, please go ahead and ask now. Yeah.
So in doing my fourth and the last paragraph of page 78 about the criminal offense, when I did my fourth and fifth step, when you said that, I was reminded of something. So is this saying that we need to go and make that right, even if it's going to end us up in jail or prison, we are still to make it right?
That's exactly what it says. Yes. Let me read it again. Okay. I'll read that last paragraph. Thank you for asking, Jody. We're going to read the top full complete paragraph on page 79. It says, although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. Now, remind ourselves, here's what it says, reminding ourselves we've decided to go to any lengths. It doesn't say most lengths, any lengths, to find a spiritual experience. We ask our higher power that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing. Here's the answer to your question. No matter what the personal consequences may be, we may lose our position or reputation or, whoops. Sorry about the timer going off. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing, we have to be, we must not shrink at anything. That's the answer. Very clear. It's not a gray area. So does that make sense to everybody, to tap into our higher power and get that guidance, that nudge, that voice that tells us the right thing to do? Yeah. Okay, so that's what we do. Pray, 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 and listen to that, our higher power and the guidance we get. And if you want a second or third and fourth opinion, that's totally fine. You know, your higher power might say, hey, why don't you discuss this with some people that you trust and respect in the program and get a second opinion, you know, and a third and a fourth. That's what I do when I make big decisions. I run it by other people to make sure I'm doing the right thing, because I don't always, you know, get crystal clear guidance from my higher power. Sometimes I need to double check. So that's always a good idea if it's a significant decision. But as far as a matter of principle, we do the right thing no matter what the consequence. In fact, we're going to read more examples of that. There's more coming up. We're going to get to them shortly. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and continue then. We're in the middle of page 79 now. And here's another example of what we need to do. It says, usually, however, other people are involved. So therefore, we are not to be the hasty and foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. So here's an example of that, other people being involved. It says, a man we know had remarried. So because of resentment and drinking, he had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court, got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life, had secured a position, and was getting his head above water. So he's in the AA program. He's practicing these principles. He's taking the steps with a sponsor. Life is good. He's going to meetings and he's getting everything squared away in his life. So he says it would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, "Here I am." So he owes his first wife money and he hasn't been paying. This is a criminal offense. We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. So he couldn't just go marching up and jeopardize his current family without checking with them. He needed to be sure. There's additional consideration involved here. When it involves another person is what he's telling us. So here's what they suggested for him to do, because it impacts, his decision is going to impact two families, his current family and his previous. And this is the 3-part directions for an amends, by the way. You might want to get your pen and highlighter out, because this tells us exactly what an amends is. And it's 3 parts. So they suggested that he write his first wife. Here's part 1, admitting his faults. So that's the first thing you do when you make an amends. You say, "Hey, I did you wrong. I lied to you, I cheated, I stole, I did this, I did that," whatever you did, you admit your faults to them. That's number 1. Number 2, and asking forgiveness. You say, "Please forgive me. I apologize, please forgive me. I did you wrong" is part 1. "Please forgive me" is part 2. And then, so he did that. And he also sent a small amount of money. He told her what he would try to do in the future. So he was telling her how he was going to set matters straight. That's the 3rd part of an amends. The action that you're going to take to remedy the situation, to repair. So he was going to send her money. Or you can ask, say, "What do I need to do to make things right, to set matters straight?" So you can either make a suggestion, a proposal to them, or you can ask them what they want you or expect you to do to make things right, to mend that relationship. So part 1, I did you wrong, admit your faults. Part 2, please forgive me, ask forgiveness. And part 3, here's what I'm going to do to set matters straight, or what do I need to do to set matters straight? That's what an amends is. 1, 2, 3. So he said, I'm going to keep reading here. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. And of course, she did not. And the whole situation has long since been adjusted. So you have to be careful when it involves other people. And this one worked out good, So here we go on the top of page 80. We're going to read more examples of this amends process and see how it applies to you and the amends that you might owe people. It says, before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. So if your amends is going to involve other people, you need to talk to them about it. You don't want to cause harm to anybody. It says, if we have obtained permission, so if they said, okay, have consulted with others and asked God to help. There it is again. You see that? Asked God to help. There's more prayer involved here. And the drastic step is indicated. We must not shrink. So there it is. If it's a drastic step, there's going to be some pain and suffering. You could go to jail. You could be fined a lot of money. Your reputation could be tarnished. Something really negative could happen. Doesn't matter. If it's indicated, we have to do it. We must not shrink. So he's going to give us another example here. He says, this brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. So he flat out cheated and caused the ruin of a bitterly hated business rival. He hated this guy, said, I'll show you, and ruined the guy. So here's what happens when we do that kind of stuff. He felt he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. And here's why. He's thinking it through. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, his current partner. So he's got a successful business. He's in recovery. Everything's great now. Disgrace his family, his current family, and take away his means of livelihood. So he thought it was going to hurt him financially. It was going to disgrace his family. It was going to be harmful to the reputation of his current partner, that he has such a louse as a current, as a business partner. So he decided, what right do I have to involve those dependent upon me? So he thought, I better just not, I can't do this. How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? So he got all these thoughts going through his head. He said, well, I really, feel terrible, and I shouldn't have done that. And I wrecked a guy. I shouldn't have, but I can't do anything about it. There's nothing I can do. Well, guess what? Keep reading. He says, after consulting with his wife and partner, he brought it up with them, said, you know what? This is really eating at me. He came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks. So he secured their consent and obtained permission. So this is an example at the top of the page. It says, before taking drastic action that might implicate other people, like his wife and business partner, he secured their consent and he's going to obtain their permission. And he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his creator guilty of such ruinous slander. So guilty, that's the third thing that we did when we took our inventory in the fourth step. We did the anger and resentment, we did the fears, and we also did the guilt, shame, and remorse from the harmful conduct we've done. That's another thing that makes us uncomfortable and want to drink, guilt. And so that's why he's saying it's better to take these risks and admit my wrongdoing instead of standing guilty. He said he saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands. He was going to do the right thing and would just let the outcome be in God's hands, or he would start drinking again and all would be lost anyhow, because the guilt would eat him up and make him uncomfortable and make him drink. So he attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. This is in front of the whole congregation. His action met widespread approval. Imagine that. And today he's one of the most trusted citizens of his town. You didn't see that coming. You would think people would be disgusted with him. Now this is called building character, doing the right thing, character building. He did the right thing. This all happened years ago. And people trust him now because of what he did. So this applies to us. When we owe amends, as painful and as scary as it looks, we do it. If it's what God, when we pray about it, and we know you're getting that guidance from that inspiration, that intuitive thought, that decision from your higher power that's telling you right from wrong, if it's the right thing to do, and we do it. So does anybody have any questions or comments about what we're learning here on the 9th step amends? Is it pretty clear what we're doing here and why we're doing it? And the relief we're going to get. It's clearing our conscience for us, and we're actually it's helping other people, not only improving our life, but the lives of other people that are in our lives, people around us. Okay. So we'll go ahead and keep reading. There's more examples on this 9th step amends. At the bottom of the page, the chances are that we have domestic troubles. Well, that's pretty common with us alcoholics. Perhaps we're mixed up with women or men, in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if in this respect alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? Now, remember, this was written in the 30s. And when AA started, it was primarily men that were the alcoholics that were getting into recovery. And it was the wife that had to deal with, these bad actors, bad characters. So that's what this is really oriented to. It applies equally, though, to women. So it says the husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he's having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he's married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. So here we are again, feels remorseful. That guilt, shame, and remorse is a real killer for us, just like the resentments and anger, just like the fear and anxiety. This makes us uncomfortable and makes us want to drink. When we feel guilty, that is a trigger for us to drink. So that's why it needs to be dealt with. So whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. Yes, we do. If we are sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? That's a question. And here's the answer. Not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we've been wild, should we tell her in detail? That's a question. It says undoubtedly we should admit our fault. Remember the 3-part thing of doing an amends? We admit our fault for sure. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She'll want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. And the reason is when you bring this other person in, then the wife goes to that person and that person's spouse, and it opens up a whole bunch of people getting harmed. Remember, the 9th step is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So we have to be careful about injuring people. Come on in, Loretta.
Yeah, murder. I knew a woman that murdered another woman because she was cheating on her husband. She cut off her head, threw it in a thing. She never got caught. But yeah, it's best not to say anything, details, because yeah, a woman's a woman, or even a female, anybody, jealousy is something when is like putting hot fire on your chest, So yeah, I just had to share that. I thought of that. It was like, how some people can get away with murder. Thank you very much for letting me share. Peace out.
Yeah, thank you, Mama Bear. Yeah, that's an example of harming, who could harm other people. Be getting murdered is pretty harmful. So, okay. So it says, let's keep reading here. We have no right to involve another person. It says, we're sorry for what we have done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. So that's our living amends. It's like, I did it. I did you wrong. Please forgive me. It won't happen again. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. It says, yeah, okay, Lindsay, I got your message. It says, though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort. So this is a subject to this. This is a gray area when you're dealing with infidelity and how you disclose it and how much detail you share and how you go about it. There is no right or wrong answer. This is case by case, a lot of prayer, meditation, consulting with your higher power, discussing it with your sponsor and some other alcoholics and other people you trust. It says, though there may be justifiable exceptions and we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this the best course to take. So we don't want to give too much. The less detail we can give, the less specifics we can give, the better. To keep it as general as possible, it sounds like the suggestion here. So let's continue here. It says, our design for living is not a one-way street. It is as good for the wife as for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. So again, this is something that's got to be worked out. These infidelity things are real sticky wickets. So here's another example in this category. It says, perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. So this is where, you're just going to have to really lay it all out there. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It says it may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness, that's your goal, is to let bygones be bygones. And if you can do that, that's great. If you can both just say, look, it happened. It's not going to happen again. Let's just move on. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. There's that prayer again. You guys see that? How we get that repeated over and over and over? Prayer, ask, we ask God, we pray. That's our number one weapon here. Our number one tool in recovery is prayer. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. It says, keep it always in sight that we are dealing with that most terrible human emotion, jealousy. Like Loretta just said, somebody was so mad she murdered over it. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk a face-to-face combat. Again, these are difficult, tricky situations, case by case. So it says if we have no such complication, so let's say you don't, that's not an issue for you. It says there's plenty we should do at home. There's still plenty of other things. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is to keep sober. And that's how I felt when I first got sober. I was just so mad at my wife for not realizing that, hey, I don't drink anymore. Everything's cool now. Back off. Leave me alone. That was my honest opinion. I thought, hey, I'm sober now. Problem is solved. Life is good. And stop fussing at me. Leave me alone. And boy, was I wrong. So this is describing me perfectly. It says, certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. So Bill's given acknowledgement that, yeah, you do need to stay sober, but he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. So I wasn't even close. It says, passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today, would perhaps be dead. And that was very true with me. So staying sober just by itself is not the solution. It says the alcoholic, here's why. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. That was me. He's like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand? The wind stopped blowing." So this is an analogy here. The wind stopped blowing means I've quit drinking and everything's cool now. Well, that's not true. I mean, the place is a complete disaster. A tornado went through and blew everything to bits, and it needs to be reconstructed, rebuilt. So, speaking of reconstructed, right at the top of page 83, says, yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. This is one day at a time, doing the next right thing, day after day after day. It's a long period of reconstruction. We must take the lead. It says a remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. Okay. So here it says, we ought, so that's not an amends, just saying, hey, I'm sorry, and thinking you're done. That's not it. We already went over this. We admit our faults, we ask forgiveness, and then we ask what we need to do to set matters straight. So here's what it tells us about with the family at home after we get sober. Let's hear what Loretta has to share with us first. Are you back, Lindsay, or no? Let me get the, hold on just a moment.
I got it. Can
Yeah,
I talk?
okay. Yeah, come on in, Mama Bear, and share it with
That's
us.
exactly where I'm at right now with my daughter. Their daddy passed away, and that's what brought me to get sober. And then eventually, my higher power brought me into these rooms because we need each other, despite whatever differences we might have. However, in this road of recovery, the damage that was done mostly to my children, and all I can do is just living amends, and I could see the effects that it had on my children now, like smoking, or I don't know. My daughter's the oldest, so that's the stage I'm in, is that living amends. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you all. Thank you very much for letting me share. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it, Mama Bear, for sharing with us. And yeah, I just remembered Jen is here, but Lindsay's back. So Lindsay, I'm going to close out the timer app here, and so you can get back to it. I think it should be closed. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue then. So here's what we do with the family. Hold on. What's going on with this app? Can you access it? I'm a little messed up here. I'm trying to figure out. Let me see. Hold on here. Oh, well, it's all good. Okay. So what it says is we ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it. And here's this again, being very careful not to criticize them. Remember earlier in the chat what I posted for us? There were let me get this closed down. I'm all messed up here now with there we go. Okay, I need to get to the chat. There it is. Yeah, about we avoid retaliation or argument. We do not criticize such a person. I put all that in there. So we're going to be careful, but we need to sit down with the family and let them know, hey, this is what's up. It says their defects may be glaring. So they could be, they don't have a program like we do, and they might be, you could be taking their inventory, your family. It says, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible, partly or fully. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. So there's that 4-step prayer again. It's like, hey, we need to cut these people some slack. They're my family. I love them. They're doing some stuff wrong, but so am I, and so have I. So we're going to work together. Not going to be criticizing them. So I'm just going to ask God to help me be patient, tolerant, kind, and loving. That's how we practice these principles in all of our affairs. It says the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. See how it's in italics? That's for emphasis. When Bill put stuff in italics, that means we should really pay attention. I'll read it again. Spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. And how do we live the spiritual life? We show people that are doing things that are ticking us off and they're making mistakes and they're offending us. We show them patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. That's how we live the spiritual life. He's telling us exactly how to do it. We ask God to help us. We can't do it on our own. We need God's help, but He will help us if we're willing. It says, unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. It says our behavior will convince them more than our words. So we don't tell our family what they should do. We show them. We model the right behavior. We do that by being patient, tolerant, kind, loving, doing the right thing, character building, humility, remember, unselfishness, these types of things. That's what's going to convince them to change. Watching us do the right thing. So we must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. So of course they're going to be skeptical about the new you. You just started. You spent years being a complete, out of control, liar, cheater, stealer, alcoholic. And now you don't get sober, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, wow, you're a whole new person. Yay, everything's great. It takes time. It's a slow process. We have to show them. And so here's the last example that Bill gives us here is what happens if it's somebody that we can't make amends to. So it says, there may be some wrongs we can never fully right. So there are some times where we can't track the people down that we've harmed. They may have died, moved away, we've completely lost contact with them, whatever the case may be. And we feel terrible about it. We'd love to make amends, but we can't. Well, it's okay. Here's what Bill says. We don't worry about them. If we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. So if you can honestly tell yourself that if you could make amends to that person, that you would, and you mean it sincerely, then you don't have to worry about that guilt, shame, and remorse anymore. You can let it go. It says, some people cannot be seen. So you can send them an honest letter. If you can't see them, that's okay. Or if somebody has died, there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. So we don't want to be dragging our feet. If you've got your 8-step, when we take our inventory, we have our harmful conduct inventory. That's most of the people we owe amends to, probably a person or two on our resentment list, maybe a person or two from our fear list, and maybe another character out there. You've got your list. So it's time to make the amends. There's no reason to delay. And it says we should be, now this is, I want you to underline and highlight this. This is another guiding principle of the amends process. We should be sensible. These are the do's and don'ts, okay, of making amends. Here's what we do. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble. So that's how we approach these people when we make amends. Here's the don'ts, without being servile or scraping. So we don't crawl before them. It says, as God's people, we stand on our feet. So we have some conviction, some power behind us, our higher power. We're doing the right thing for the right reason. We're standing tall on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. We're not in some weak position. Golly gee, I'm so sorry. And no. We don't crawl before them. We stand tall. Say, hey, I'm here to do the right thing. I did you wrong. Please forgive me. I'm going to make things right. Here's how it is. Bold. Conviction. God is behind you when you do this. Remember that. So that's a rundown. We covered from page 76 to 83. All these different examples and all these principles that apply in different situations. Yeah. So that's what the amends are all about. And if you have, like I said, if you need to make some amends that are going to have some serious consequences, it's not a bad idea to get a second and third and, fourth opinion. I have in my Rolodex a trusted panel of AA advisors that I get input from when I need to make a big decision that involves some big consequences. Loretta, come on in and share.
Thank you, Clyde. Mama Bear is still an alcoholic. Yeah, and this part is so amazing. Right after that, we started into the promises, and when I turned the page, I got rainbow colors, man. It's all covered with rainbow, but a whole bunch of promises that follow after we can come to that. It's like the road to recovery is narrow and straight, and it's really hard. And we got to sometimes crawl, but once we get to that door and open it, whoa, we've got a whole bunch of things going on, promises that are there, and it really does work. Um, I've only been on this journey for what, about a year, almost 2 years, and I'm seeing those promises come to light. So I'm very grateful to you guys that will break this down for simple people like me to better understand this way of living, because it's awesome. Thank you very much for letting me share. Peace out.
Thank you, Loretta, for sharing with us. So you brought up the promises. This is what happens. This is the amazing thing. So, that fourth and fifth step was a big deal. Getting all that stuff down on paper for the first time for a lot of us, and then discussing it with another person. Those fifth step promises were amazing. We're alone at perfect peace and ease. We can look the world in the eye. The obsession to drink has been removed in a big way. And we're just being changed. That fifth step was big. Now here's an even bigger. After we do the ninth step, amends, here's what happens. Check this out. These are the promises before you even get halfway through making your amends. This is what will happen. These aren't maybes, these are promises. It says, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, steps 8 and 9, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. And there's so many promises here. It says, we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. That guilt, shame, and remorse is going away now. We will comprehend the word. Oh, so let's start with the first, the new freedom and the new happiness. Instead of all the resentment and anger, now we're free and happy. It says we won't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. So that guilt, shame, and remorse is gone away. It's going away. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. So instead of fear and anger and guilt, we're feeling more serene and peaceful. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. So the light bulbs are going off. It's like, hey, I've had to overcome a lot here recovering from alcoholism. I can help other people. This could be a benefit to other people. That's a wonderful feeling. And here is what it says, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. All of a sudden, I don't feel so useless anymore. And I'm more filled with gratitude than self-pity. It says we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. We're being relieved of the bondage of self. We're thinking about other people. Self-seeking will slip away. What an awesome thing. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. We've got a whole different set of glasses we're looking through now. The world is the same. Things aren't different out there, but the way I'm perceiving and responding is completely different now. Different attitudes, different ideas, different emotions. I'm thinking differently. I'm feeling differently. I'm acting differently. It's awesome. It says fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. So my fears are going away now. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We're getting intuitive guidance from our higher power. They talk about the spiritual experience. We're having a spiritual experience as the result of doing this work. It says we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. God did all of that. Isn't that amazing? All we did was follow the directions and do the right thing for the right reason. And then God does all this changing in us and through us. Now, depending on how you count, that's like 19 promises that I just read for us. And here's it says, are these extravagant promises? Question, and the answer, we think not. They're not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. How awesome is that? Always materialize if we work for them. And the way we work for them is to be willing, honest, and open-minded, and just follow the directions. Just do the work and trust the process. God does the outcome. We just put in the effort with some willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. Follow the directions. We just read the directions from page 60 through where we just ended, 84, is the directions for the steps 3 through 9. And that's what happens. All those promises come true as a result of taking the first 9 steps. So that's a definition of a spiritual experience, by the way. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. That is a spiritual awakening. The personality change, the psychic change, the vital spiritual experience. So now what's going to happen is Bill's going to take us into steps 10, 11, and 12. Line by line, we're going to study this. And that's what we live in, and that's where we grow. Those are the spiritual growth steps. So once we've gotten to this point, once we get halfway through our amends, we've had a spiritual awakening. We are new people. We're recovered. And then we grow from there by living in steps 10, 11, and 12. So, wow. That's where we're at. And does anybody have any questions or comments or experience with what we're just studied today about the 9th step? All right, that'll be a great place to stop for this week. And we're going to pick up on step 10 next week in the middle of page 84. So if you don't have any questions about the 9th step and the amends, it's all pretty clearly spelled out for us on those pages we just studied. So let's go ahead and wrap things up then. So, oh, hold on, Shia. Yeah. Here, let's get back over here. Come on in and share with us, Shia.
Oh, hi. My name is Shia, and
Shia.
I'm a recovering alcoholic. And you know what? I want to say thank you so much for covering this because we put it in such blatant terms and it's very easy to understand. And it does make you see where you have to go make sure you're being careful with taking these steps and doing them properly. But is there like do you do this regularly or is this like a study guide that you would have for this?
Yeah, we meet here every Sunday. We're working through the big books from 2 to 3:30.
Okay.
Yeah, we're studying. So next week we're going to pick up in the middle of page 84 where it says this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory, etc. So yeah, we're just working our way through the first 164 pages of the big book is what we're
Okay.
doing here. Yeah, you're welcome to
Okay.
join us every week. We'd love to have you. Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We're glad you came and joined us today. Thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming to the Cousin Jonathan and Clyde the Rocketman Big Book study. Like we just said, we meet here every Sunday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern in this room. And thank you, Lindsay, for being our timer, and Jen for being here and being of service. So this podcast will be available by this Friday, and you can join us on Telegram for updates. So here's what Big Book page 164 says. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. So we're going to go ahead and close this meeting now by reciting the Lord's Prayer together. You can all unmute yourselves if you'd like to join us and come on in. And so who brought us together for this great meeting today?
Our Father,
Our
Our
Father,
Father, who
who
art
art
in
in
heaven,
heaven,
hallowed
hallowed
be
be
thy
thy
name.
name. Thy
Thy
kingdom
kingdom
come,
come,
thy will be
thy
done
will be
on
done
earth
on
as it is
earth
in
as it
heaven.
is in heaven.
Give us this
Give
day
us
our
this
daily
day our
bread,
daily
and forgive
bread.
us of our
Forgive us our
trespasses.
trespasses.
We forgive those
Forgive
who
those who
trespass against
trespass
us.
against us.
And lead us not into
Not into
temptation, but
temptation,
deliver us
but
from
deliver
evil.
us from evil.
For thine is the
For thine is
kingdom,
the
the
kingdom,
power,
the
and the
power,
glory,
and the glory
forever and ever.
forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen.
Great meeting, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Clyde.
All
Thank
right,
you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great.